So I know we've already spoken about this, and we've already done notes on this section, but I wanted to do notes again because it was over a week ago that we did this, and then we moved on to just speak about polynomials. So I want you to pay close attention, and I know it was challenging for some of you, so now you're going to have this video that you could rewind as many times as you'd like if you want me to repeat something, okay, or if you don't understand something. Because this is important in your test. You're going to have a test on Friday, and it's all going to be quadratics, okay? And we are getting through this section today. We started the section over a week ago, and we're going to get through it today. When I come back to school tomorrow, we're going to go on to something else. So make sure you completely understand this by the end of this video. Pause it, take notes, do whatever you need to do. So first, remember what the standard form is of a quadratic equation. What is the standard form of a quadratic equation? We discussed that last week or a little over a week ago, and that is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, that is the standard form of a quadratic equation. And all quadratic equations are going to have that U shape, whether it points up or it points down. And if you don't believe me, put in some random equations that have x squared in it. Okay, and you'll see that you're going to get, in your graphing calculator, you'll see that you'll get that U shape. Okay, and we discussed when the U is going to be pointing up, and we discussed when the U is going to be pointing down, so hopefully some of you remember that. But instead of calling it U, okay, what is the actual name for that? We've discussed this, and we've talked about this many times this year. We call this a parabola. One graph of quadratic equation creates a U-shaped curve called a parabola. Okay, a parabola. So use your graphing calculator to sketch the following. I know we've already done these two examples, but I want you to put them in your graphing calculator again, just so that you could practice getting into that y equals and putting things into your graphing calculator and see what it gives you. Okay, pause the video and go ahead and see what it gives you. So that first one should give you a graph that looks something like that. Well, maybe not that wide, but something like that. And it should give you that U shape that we call a parabola. And if you remember from a little over a week ago, there's this imaginary line that acts as a reflection line, and we call that the axis of symmetry. So everything on the right side is going to be a mirror image of everything on the left side. Okay, and this bottom point here, if you remember from over a week ago, we call that our vertex, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a few moments. That's not how you spell vertex. Vertex. Okay. We also talked about whether this vertex would be a minimum or maximum, so hopefully you remember that this is a minimum, but if you don't, we'll talk about that in just a few moments. All right, and then the second one, we have y equals negative x squared plus 3x plus 7. So hopefully you remember what this negative does. That's going to flip the parabola around. But please practice, put this in your graphing calculator and see what it gives you. Should have given you something that looks like this. Okay. Now the parabola is facing down. Why? Because the number in front of x squared was negative, and that flips the parabola around. Again, this is your axis of symmetry, and your vertex would be this point right here. Okay, and in this case, we'd call the vertex a maximum because the rest of the graph is below the vertex. It's the top point on this parabola. So if A is positive, and I hope you figured that out by using your graphing calculator, then the parabola opens up like a smile. If A is negative, then the parabola opens down, and we figured that out just by using our graphing calculators. You saw that when you put that in your graphing calculator, when A was positive, And by A, I'm talking about this number right here, the number that's in front of x. So in this case, what number was in front of x? Well, positive 1. When A was positive, our graph was up, pointed up. When A was negative, our graph was down, pointing down. Okay. Axis of symmetry. So remember, the axis of symmetry is the vertical line that divides the parabola into two equal parts. I know you've already written it down. Write it down again so you don't forget. It's the vertical line that divides the parabola into two equal parts. And formula for axis of symmetry, we went over this a week and a half ago, but the formula that will give us the axis of symmetry is x equals negative b over 2a. That is the formula that would give us the axis of symmetry. What is the vertex? The vertex is going to be the turning point of the parabola. So if the vertex is the lowest point, we call that a minimum. If the vertex is the highest point, we call that a maximum. All right, so let's take a look at this example. Axis of symmetry. Let's find the axis of symmetry first. So let's label all of our different components here. What number is in front of the x squared? What number is in the a position? That would be a positive 1, right? Because there's an invisible positive 1 in front of that x. All right, what number is in the b position? That would be a positive 8. What number is in the c position? That would be a positive 15, although c doesn't really do much for us in terms of finding the axis of symmetry and the vertex. All right, so to find the axis of symmetry, remember the axis of symmetry is just negative b over 2a. So it's going to be x equals negative b, which is 8, over 2 times a, which is 1. So what is our axis of symmetry? Negative 8 over 2, which is just negative 4. Now, how do we find our vertex? Well, we know our axis of symmetry is going to be this line, x equals negative 4. X equals negative 4. That vertical line is going to be our axis of symmetry. But remember, the axis of symmetry runs through the vertex, right? We learned that a week and a half ago. So if x equals negative 4 is that vertical line that runs through the vertex, that means the x coordinate of my vertex is going to be negative 4. So how would I find the y coordinate? Easy. I just plug in negative 4 into our quadratic and solve for y. And that would give you your vertex. So first, let's write our axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry is going to be x equals negative 4. Okay? And our vertex, what's our vertex going to be? Well, we're just going to plug in negative 4 wherever we see an x. So it's going to be y equals negative 4. And negative 4 is x, so we have to square negative 4. Plus 8 times negative 4 plus 15. Well, negative 4 squared is 16. That's negative 4 times negative 4. And 8 times negative 4 is negative 32. And that's plus 15. So if you add all that together, you get y equals negative 1. So what is your vertex? Your vertex is negative 4, comma 1. So if you want to do a quick sketch, which I do want you to do a quick sketch. So first of all, is this parabola going to be opening up or down? What tells us if it's going to be opening up or down? A. And if you look at A, let me zoom in really close so you take a look at A. You look at A there, it's 1. It's an invisible 1, but it's a positive 1. So therefore, if it's positive, that means it's going to be opening up. That was probably a little bit too much of a zoom, I'm sorry. So it's going to be opening up. So we know it's going to look like this. Okay, what else do we know about it? We know that the axis of symmetry is going to be, that's not a straight line, is it? The axis of symmetry, that's still not a straight line, but whatever, is going to be x equals negative 4 with that vertical line there. And we also know that the vertex is going to be negative 4, comma 1. Pause the video, put this in your graphing calculator, and see that you have a parabola that opens up and it has a vertex of negative 4, comma 1. And then let's move on. Number 2. All right, so let's label everything first. We have A is equal to negative 1, B is equal to 10, and C, we'll label it, but we don't really need it. That's negative 23. Okay, so axis of symmetry, remember, is negative B over 2A. And that's x equals negative B over 2A. So it's going to be x, let me do this in black instead. X equals, that's negative 1. No, it's not. I'm sorry. That's not B. I'm sorry about that. That's negative 10. I apologize for that. Negative 10 because B is 10. And remember, the formula is x equals negative B over 2A. And that's over 2 times negative 1. So what would that be? That would be negative 10 over negative 2, which would be positive 5. That is our axis of symmetry. And remember, the axis of symmetry runs through the vertex. So if we're trying to figure out the vertex, we just solve for y using our axis of symmetry, using 5. So that's going to be y equals negative. And this time, we're only squaring 5. That negative is going to be on the outside. Why? Because our x was not negative 5. Our x was positive 5. Okay, that's the only thing that we're squaring. The negative was on the outside of the x, which would mean that we're multiplying whatever outcome we get here by a negative 1. All right? But that's not the same as saying, well, we're squaring the negative 2. We're not. That negative is not part of the power here. Okay, we're only squaring 5. And then we're going to multiply that by negative. It confuses a lot of you because a lot of you think, well, I see a negative 5 squared, and I thought, well, that's supposed to be 25, right? You're not supposed to get a negative number when you square something. And you are correct, but we're not squaring negative 5. We're only squaring positive 5. We're squaring positive 5. And then that's going to be multiplied by that negative on the outside. That's plus 10 times 5 minus 23. And if you solve this, you get negative times 25, so it would be negative 25 plus 50 minus 23, which would give you y equals 2. So your vertex is going to be 5, 2. And if you sketch it, you would get what kind of parabola you're going to get? Well, if you look at your A is negative, right? That's a negative 1, so that means that your parabola is going to be opening downward. You're going to have an axis of symmetry right over here at x equals 5. And your vertex is going to be right here, which is 5, 2. Again, pause the video, graph in your graphing calculator, make sure you get the same thing. All right, next, label all of them. We have our A, which is 3, our B, which is negative 12, our C, which is 5, which we don't really need. All right, axis of symmetry, remember that's x, and I'll rewrite the equation again, x, or the formula, x equals negative B over 2A. So this is going to be x equals negative 12. 2 negatives, that's going to change to a positive. Over 2 times 3, 2a. Again, take a look at that. Let me zoom in really close. Looks like a face. All right, we have 2 negatives. 2 negatives is going to make a positive, positive, positive. All right, so that's going to be, positive 12 over 6, which is just 2. Our axis of symmetry is going to be at 2. So let's write that in. Axis of symmetry, x equals 2. How do we find our vertex? Just plug in 2. This is going to be, hope I'm not making any of you dizzy by all this zooming in and out. That's going to be, let's see, what was the formula again? It was y equals 3 times 2 squared. Remember, you have to do the 2 squared before you multiply it by 3. Minus 12 times 2 plus 5. 2 squared is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. That's minus 24 plus 5, which would give us our answer, which is y equals negative 7. So what's our vertex? Our vertex is going to be at 2, comma, negative 7. Well, let's do our sketch. First, we need to see if it's going to be opening up or down. Well, if you look at that A there, That's a positive A. That's a positive 3. So that tells us that it's going to be opening up. All right, we also know that our axis of symmetry is going to be right at x equals 2. And we know that our vertex is going to be this point right here, which is 2, negative 7. I don't want this video to be over. Oh, wait, before I say this, please pause the video, graph it on the graphing calculator, make sure you get the same thing I got or the same thing we got. I don't want this video to be over 20 minutes, so I think I'm going to skip a few problems and go down to 7. Do 7, 8, and 9. See if I could do that in 20 minutes. All right, so 7. Label everything. You have your A, which is I was doing that in red before. A, which is negative 1. That right there should tell you, hey, it's going to be open and down. Our vertex is going to be a maximum. B, which is 4. C, which is 0. Okay. Axis of symmetry. Remember the formula. If you don't remember, rewind and look at the formula again. So it's going to be x equals negative b, which is negative 4, over 2 times negative 1. So that's going to be negative 4 over negative 2, which is just positive 2. And in order to find our vertex, you're just going to plug in 2 anywhere you see an x. So it's going to be y equals, remember, this is a positive 2. Oh, I wanted to highlight. I didn't want to do that. This is a positive 2. The negative that's here on the outside, we're multiplying that after we square whatever x is. Okay, so this is going to be y equals, what was the equation again? Oh, y equals negative, that's still highlighter, crap, negative, and then x is 2, but we're only squaring 2, plus 4 times 2. So that's going to be negative 4 plus 8, which would make y equal to 4. So our axis of symmetry again was x equals 2, and our vertex is 2, 4. The A was negative, right? That tells us that it's going to be opening down like this. Our axis of symmetry is going to be right here, which is x equals 2. And our vertex is this point right here, which is going to be a maximum, and that's going to be at 2, 4. Now, be careful with 8 and 9. I'll do 9, because I don't think I'll have time to do 8. If we label them, A is negative 2, but what is B? Remember, B is the number that's in front of x. Okay, now if you look at this, there is no x. So what would B be? So we could rewrite this, and it's the same thing as saying y equals negative 2x squared plus 0x plus 8, right? We're not really changing anything because 0x is nothing. But that kind of makes it a little clearer as to what B is going to be. So what is B going to be? B is going to be 0, and C is going to be what's 8, which we don't really use C, at least not yet. All right, so axis of symmetry is going to be x equals negative b, which is just going to be 0, over 2a. So 2 times negative 2, which would be negative 4. And that's just going to be 0. All right. So your axis of symmetry is x equals 0. What's your vertex going to be? We'll plug in 0. It's going to be y equals negative 2 times 0 squared plus 8. Well, negative 2 times 0 squared, that's 0. So y is just going to be 8. Your axis of symmetry is going to be at 0, 8. All right. So what kind of sketch is this going to be? Well, let's take a look at our A again. Our A was negative, so that tells me that this is going to be going down. It's going to be looking like a frown. Okay. We have our axis of symmetry here. Our axis of symmetry is going to be at x equals 0. And our vertex is right here, which is 0, 8. Pause the video, graph it in your graphic calculator, make sure you got the same thing. You're going to be doing a worksheet now. use this video for reference, rewind it, get the things that you need, finish that worksheet, and make sure you understand how to find the axis of symmetry and the vertex of a quadratic equation. Make sure you have memorized the formula to find the axis of symmetry. And look, I'm exactly at 20 minutes. Perfect. Have a great day.